I'd like to introduce Elizabeth Addison as our guest artist today. Elizabeth's artwork encompasses printmaking, mixed media, digital media, and immersive installation. In Elizabeth's demo entitled Ink and Flow, Exploring Nature Through the Creative Process, she will tell us how she conceptualizes, plans, and crafts dimensional collages and sculptural works using printmaking, digital composition, and mixed media techniques. Elizabeth, welcome to Fremont Art Association.
Hi, everybody, and it's nice to see a lot of familiar faces here as well. My name is Elizabeth Addison, and I'm a Berkeley-based interdisciplinary visual artist, curator, and educator, although I haven't been doing much educating lately. Today, I'm going to demonstrate how I go through the thought and planning process for dimensional works. And today I'll be working on some studies that I'm doing for a much larger work that hopefully will be finished in time for my November solo exhibition at the O'Hanlon Center for the Arts for the month of November. Many of you who know me know that the natural world inspires me. And it's where I find that I'm most comfortable and what I'm most passionate about. And I suppose I regard myself as an eco-feminist and a feminist artist. I would say over the last 4 or 5 years, California's native flora and waterways, and particularly the Smith River in Northern California, has been my muse. Since COVID, when my family and I spent a lot of time up there, and we do yearly as well. It's an annual trip for us. You know, I realized the importance of fresh water for all of our lives and globally. It's an increasing issue, and the Smith River, if some of you are familiar with it, is California's last wild river. If you want to find out more about it, you can go to America's Scenic and Wild Rivers, and they have a lot to say about it. And there's also the Smith River Alliance, and that's a really wonderful organization to support. I also want to mention that since 2019, I've immersed myself in socially and environmentally engaged curatorial work with the Northern California Women's Caucus for Art. I am their exhibitions chair, and that's how I met Lena Melkonian, who invited me to speak to you today. I curated with Leah Andrews at the Olive Hyde Gallery, the Women Create Space sculpture exhibit. And I hope some of you got to see that this summer. It was really, really spectacular. The experience has been really amazing, allowing me to connect with so many like-minded creatives and experts. And I felt that, well, I know that these past, since 2019, I guess almost 6 years, working with so many artists together, especially women artists, you know, we were able to amplify our voices, spark action and meaningful discussion, and draw inspiration from the present moment. And I really feel art has the power to do that. And to bring you to the present moment where I'm going to start my demo, I need to show you a short video, because what I do is in layers and in stages and takes many days, sometimes weeks, to get to the point where I'm going to start with you now. And so I am going to show you a little video, and it'll be fast forward to today. So let me get this started for you, and then I'll share. Hold on. I'm able to share, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. I hope everyone can see this. Here we go. This is some of the original Smith River photography. I'm going to go back just a minute to start with that. that I start with. Um, this is actually the color and the clarity of the Smith River in one of our favorite swimming holes. And this is the image I started with to bring you the images you're going to see today. And I manipulate them on Photoshop. Sometimes they go back and forth between drawing, remediating it on the computer till we get to, you know, a place where I feel comfortable starting or using it as is. And then you know, this is really for the background. I look at colors that will be complementary or interesting because most of these dimensional pieces have a backside that I like to reflect onto the substrate. And also when it's dimensional and I'm cutting pieces away, it's nice to see that color pop. And so this is just one of the things I do. And I really love paint. And sometimes I mix in a little bit of iridescence because I like when people look at my pieces from different angles and it changes color. And that's why I'm spending way too much painting this background, which most people won't see, except for little bits, because I want the color variations to be subtle. And I find that when there are color variations, even when they're really subtle and from a distance, it looks like a solid block, it activates your mind, I think, a little bit more than just a flat color. And that's just my experience and my background in advertising and being a graphic artist. And, you know, has influenced me too. And, oops, here I go again. I had to add more quinacridone magenta. It's really ridiculous. Okay, let's move on. I think I'm going to move on very quickly here. Okay, I'll paint a whole bunch of backgrounds at the same time. I have always several projects going at the same time. I'm going to pause this, but I make a pattern for how I'm going to, and so the pieces I'm going to show you today, the studies, are based upon a new pattern that I have. It's sort of a wave of scales that are going to be raised from the surface. So I mark where I want all of the pieces to go, all the little scales, and I transfer them onto the back. And then I go in later with a stencil because I want the shapes to be fairly regular. I've thought about using laser cutting, but on paper, especially 100% rag paper, it doesn't really work out so well. So this shows you all of my tools and the stencils. And then I'm getting ready to print. Sometimes I just, you know, love the digital as it is. And lately I've been doing a lot of hybrid prints where I use a lot of analog techniques and collage in addition to the digital. And it adds a lot of depth and interest for me. And so I always create a template on the back of my printmaking plate. This is a plexiglass plate. You flip it over and then you pretty much know where things are. I'm moving on now to the substrate. Under each of these pieces where I'm lifting up pieces or cutting away, I like to have other pieces underneath. And in this case, I'm going to be using an iridescent mylar or cellophane. I'm also right there creating a base that's going to be raised from the substrate. Everything is slightly raised. Don't throw out your art books. You can use them to weight down all of your pieces. They do have a use after all these years. And so, yes, there it is. That's the substrate. And And then I'm going to paint the background of that because I paint the underside of everything, as you'll see, because I've really fallen in love with the idea of items being lifted from the surface and having a color that reflects even subtly or glows underneath the lifted pieces. And it's subtle. It depends what angle you're looking at it, how the sunlight is hitting it. And, you know, I've had some people say, like, do you have a light on underneath that? Or something illuminated? And no, it's just reflecting. And yeah. And then here I don't always do this, but I'm giving it a tint underneath because the iridescent mylar I have is clear. I also have some blue, but I wanted to go red this time. And for my study, I'm trying it 2 different ways, and I'll show you because I prepared 2 different substrates for you. And like you voted earlier today, I'm going to have you vote on what you like best for my study because you're going to see this all in real time and you'll get to, yeah. And then I glue that all on. And yes, glue, that's my go-to glue. I buy it by the gallon, really. It has worked best with, you know, paper, plastic, whatever I'm using, and it holds. I've had a lot of experience with pieces that have fallen apart once they've been framed. Like some of you probably heard about the artist Nick Cage, whose his public pieces started falling apart in public. They had to take it down from an airport. We don't want that. Not that this is going to be in an airport. And this is the fun part where you just lay it on. And it's okay for it to be a little bit wrinkled too. I smooth it out, take out the bubbles, but you're not going to see so much of it. And this is boring now, but it shows you how much prep and how many steps and how many different stages are involved. And, you know, I find some of this stuff rather meditative. I have audiobooks, and music really influences, you know, how I do my work as well. And getting out more of the bubbles. And then, of course, a lot of glue comes out on the sides, and you just cut that all off. And then you have this wonderful substrate, and you'll see both of mine later today. And believe me, I use my printmaking tools for everything. I started out as a printmaker, and that was my first love in college, and got away from it, spending years in advertising and education, and now I'm back. These are some of the colors. They're translucent printmaking inks that I've mixed, especially for this. And I always prepare several because you need an heir and a spare in case one doesn't make it. I usually have 3 going at the same time. And for those of you who are familiar with printmaking, I'm just brayering this on. Simple printmaking technique, although I've been known to do pretty complex printmaking, but I'm just giving you a very simple rundown. And I'm just using some medium stiffness tarlatan to brush away because I want the print to come through and create a rough, but sort of hand painted. You want that sort of painterly feeling overlay, or I do when I mix it with the digital. And then I have a small press in my studio. I have a beautiful little Griffin. But when I do large projects, I am an artist in residence at Kala Art Institute, and I go there That's where I also print really large digital pieces and work on large printmaking pieces. Some of you are familiar with Kala, and they have excellent classes. And then this just goes into the press. And another view of my studio, which is my garage. And I share it with a motorcycle and various other things. But I do have a do not disturb sign. That's really important to have as an artist. And then this is the moment we've all been waiting for, when you pull your print off the press. And this is pretty much where we're going to start. And you'll see, whoops, I also did a few more ideas. You do one and then you realize, oh, you know, I might want to play up on the phthalo. And I'm using a lot of phthalos in this project because whenever I'm up at the Smith, it's all phthalo. Phthalo blues, you know, phthalo turquoise, phthalo green. That's what's happening up there. And that's pretty much it. And now you are up to date. So I am gonna start with my sample number 1. And are we gonna switch to? We are switched, yay. So this is, you know, you saw some of the various iterations I did. So here's one that has quite a bit of stencil and monotype. Here's one that's staying fairly basic. I also have another one where I didn't do anything at all to it. And I have yet another that I did a lot to. So I tend to overdo it. I'm going to put my gloves on and I'm just going to add, you know, show you how I'll use a stencil after I've done a lot of printmaking on this. I use stencils. Sometimes I ink the stencils or do, you know, kind of calligraphic kind of things on this too. I just mix it all up. And because I am printing on 100% cotton rag paper, and you can ask me about what kind of papers I use anytime, they're really great in the press as well as for digital. So I have an idea what I'm going to do with the center. And I've already pre-mixed a bunch of inks. And I'm going to use a brush I fashioned for stenciling. And I'm going to go in here because this ended up being rather mandala-like. And I'm just going to carry through here. Please ask me any questions you might have at any time. And I don't know if you should unmute yourself or if someone wants to moderate those questions because my eyes are on this. And so it's kind of fun. And then I'm going to take some color and go around the edges here for just to give it a little gradation. And I think for now, that gives you an idea of how you can add to it. Here are some of my other stencils. I was thinking about doing some dot patterns on this, but I'm not going to. It would just be kind of weird. So we're going to move things along because I know that we have limited time. I'm going to put this aside. Also, another thing that I do is I will sort of blot it, because normally I would let this dry a couple of days, but I'm not going to do that today. And then you lift it off, and that's a good way to deal with that. So we're going to put this one aside right now because I have other plans for this later. And that's the surprise. Okay. Number 2. Let me move the inks out of the way, because that could get messy. Okay. And this is where I want to show you how I work on the transfer. So can you see that there's a bit of a pattern here already? I hope you can. It's hard for me to see. But after I indicated approximately where all the lines will flow, and I know that some of these will flow one way and I'm calling them scales, will flow another, I'll start tracing these. So I've created a stencil, and I'll start tracing them. And this is another process that some people find tedious, but I find it very meditative. This is when I like listening to a really, really good audio book or music, and tends to calm me down. And I've also varied the sizes of the scales so that they'll have some variation when they're flowing. This is another thing. I like just some random variation because it's more interesting as opposed to everything being the same. And so that's what I've done here. I've spent a lot of time, maybe 45 minutes or so, tracing all of that. And I'm going to start cutting it. And also, after I do all of that, I hand cut all of this, or I'll use this circle cutter. The circle cutter is really more for mats, and I hate to say that it's unreliable, and I've ruined several pieces doing that if the paper gets caught, especially if it's fibrous. So I find if I print it out with a clean edge, I can do a really, really good job cutting it on my own. But then I spend yet another meditative hour or so just cutting. I hope you can see. I'm left-handed, so I might be blocking some of this. And we just cut and cut, and every now and then shake out your hand. I made one little tiny one at the top.
Elizabeth, we have a question.
Uh-huh.
So your pieces are stunning. How do you know when your piece is finished? Is it an intuitive feel?
That is a really good question. Sometimes I don't know if it's finished until after it's framed. Or but sometimes it just feels right and I'm done. And I hate to say there's quite a bit of variation and I go by feel. There have been times that I've gone back to a piece a year or so later. But generally, I would say on average, I know it's finished when all the pieces work together. And I wish I could be more specific about that. That's a really good question that I'd love to be more specific about. So I hope you can see this. Can you see that? Then I just push it out and I take this tiny flange and open it up. And it's a nice contrasting color to what's happening elsewhere on this piece. I'm going to move on. I channeled cooking shows to do this for you, and I have pieces in several different stages. It's kind of like, okay, here's the chicken marinating. Here's the chicken in the oven. I've got it all for you. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to a piece that is already cut, so you don't have to suffer through this with me. And this is the piece that, speaking of when do I know if something is finished? I worked on this for quite some time. I don't feel satisfied with it. It's a study for a larger piece. Do I get upset about it? Do I keep working on it? Sometimes you just have to leave it alone for like a week or a month and have the patience to come back to it. And then it'll, I find that my work speaks to me and it tells me what it wants. So likewise, I'm going to just open up these pieces here. How are we doing on time? Doing okay.
Elizabeth, what is your substrate? What are you working on right now?
The paper?
Yes.
Oh, the paper that I print on is 100% cotton rag. For the digital work, I use the Moab Entrada papers or the Red River Aurora papers. And I ordered those online, usually in rolls, sometimes a specific size, a box of them. And I'm happy to share that information with anyone who wants it. I've really liked the Red River. Moab is beautiful paper. So is, all of the printmaking papers also offer digital printmaking like Hahnemühle and Canson and all of those. But I like these the best. And when I'm working on a really large piece, which this will eventually become, I will use a really heavyweight paper. And it's important because I'm doing so much sculptural work with these that they be 100% cotton rag, because they will hold their shape. And once you have them flattened, they will stay that way. This is a somewhat more flexible weight. For these smaller pieces, I don't get, I think it's 300 pound that I use for them. But you can see what I'm doing here. I'm starting to lift up all the scales. And I already did another one of these. It's complete, and I ended up curling the scales up. And I'm not sure that's what I want for the large piece when I do it. So this one, another study, will be with the scales just sort of opened up you know, like advent calendars where you're opening the doors. And this isn't everything, but I don't want to bore you. And what time it is. Yep, we're gonna.
We have plenty of time, and it's just like magic when you open it.
Oh,
It
I don't want to bore you.
doesn't feel boring at all.
It's kind of fun. Let's see, some of them are popped on the inside. So yeah, so this is, you know, on the inside. So it's coming together, and it's fun to see it take shape at all these different stages. Sometimes it's hard to hold the end concept in mind. And I developed this technique probably during COVID, when, you know, we weren't going, you know, I couldn't go to Kala Art Institute initially. There were a lot of things we couldn't do. We were home. We were walking every day to keep our sanity. And I started taking photos of nature. Some of you might be familiar with my Pandemania Days series, which was, I started creating digital mandalas based upon my daily wanderings. And what I would look at closely. Every day I tried to look at something very deeply, very closely. And that sort of got me onto this path. And sort of I arrived back at doing digital work. Whoops, there was one I missed. There's always one that you miss. When I stopped teaching digital arts and ended my career in advertising, I got away from the computer. It was really important for me to go analog. If I didn't see another computer again in my life, I would have been happy. But it was really interesting coming back to digital work, and I realized how much I enjoyed it, and I was doing it on my own terms. So that really helped me get back into it. And then, you know, think about, well, how can I, you know, do I have two bodies of work? Do I have an analog work, you know, where everything's, you know, handmade, and, you know, or do I do one or the other, or do I mix it up? And so that is where I have landed, mixing it all up. Come on. I think I'm almost there. And during COVID, I also, after doing some desk cleaning for a dear friend and someone else, I realized that I couldn't leave all the crap and all the artwork and all the unfinished stuff in my studio for my daughters, that would be cruel. And so I started going through all of my drawers and cabinets and throwing things out and going, why was I holding on to all this stuff? And like, oh, this is so nice. I can make it into something else. And so that's what I did. I just started realizing, well, I don't know why I was saving this. Nothing is sacred. You know, I got into that sort of mind space. Give it a new life. And so I end up giving a lot of unfinished, failed, and scraps of artwork a new life. And in doing so, that's how the dimensionality sort of started happening for me. And so I don't know if you can see this now, but I've sort of lifted all of those up. And you can you see the sheen?
Yes.
A little bit of a sheen. So you kept me company while I did this. I'm going to have to ask you to join me next time, or when I do the 36 by 36 inch one. Okay, so here's one unadulterated. I always keep one that's unadulterated. I didn't do any monotype or painting or stenciling on this piece at all. And I folded up the scales and curled them using a pencil to gently fold them. I mean, once you've painted the backside, you know, the acrylic paint adds a certain stiffness to it, so you want to be gentle. Sometimes I also do a digital print on the back, and that keeps the paper a little more pliable, but then you don't get that sort of sheen and sort of different sensation that you really don't notice, but it's subtle. Okay, this is the fun part. Hold on just a minute. So those substrates I told you about, here's one that's just plain or uncolored, iridescent cellophane. And I've already glued it to a substrate. And you see that there's, I don't know if you can see the red glow yet. I might be blocking it with my shadows, but it is there. And then I also have one that you saw me make in the video. And I wanted to show you that the back side is also lifted. So when we place these on top, they will be lifted by a couple of layers from its mount. So can you see this? This is the red. And you're going to help me vote by voting if you like the without or with. And it probably depends upon, is that getting across? Are you seeing how the colors change?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So I have two different ones. And here, I'll try this one. Here's the one where I've made it feel, I don't know, it feels more like wings or something here. This is a little
Beautiful.
bit subtle.
Very pretty.
Kind of
And-
have different like, mood in them.
A different mood, uh-huh.
Yeah,
Here,
I
I'm
like
gonna-
them both.
Uh-huh. Okay. Well, I will do both of them, and both of them will be at my open studios for San Francisco Open Studios at Art Gallery in October, I think it is this year. I wanted to show you a slightly smaller piece that I did about a year ago or so. It was in the Los Gatos Open, and it won an award, Mixed Media Award. And that's sort of, you know, one of the many I've done like this, where I didn't want all of the openings to be regular. So I'm using sort of a grid, and I'm thinking somewhat mathematically. But everything is at a slightly different angle. And okay, so that's where I am with that. And if anyone has some thoughts about what they like best, I wanted to let you know that the next step will be mounting it to the board and letting it dry. Sometimes I have to, once I've figured out exactly how it's going to go, I might peel back sections of the cellophane as a technical note, just to make sure that when I glue it and adhere it to the surface, that there are places where it will stick no matter what. And some of these I frame in a shadow box with museum plexi. The Optium, was it Optium plexi is really super clear and very expensive. If you can get that, I suggest you do. And that works as well. And I have some examples of how I do that. So I'd also like to know, which one do you think would be great, like 3 feet by 3 feet? You have any ideas? Just put them in the chat. I would love your opinions.
Will you open those scales a little bit more later, or they will stay like this, like half?
I can, yeah, and quite often what's nice about this paper, and I'm glad that someone asked about that, is that it's very flexible. And sometimes I'll take a special tool. I can excuse my back for a second. Any sort of like, bookmaking tool, graphic art tool. You go like this. It'll pretty much stay where you leave it. Sometimes when the paper is completely dried and you have to wait a long time when you're using printmaking inks, and I'm using the Cranfield's Safe Wash inks. I try to have a clean and non-toxic studio. I don't use any volatile evaporatives. And I, just use vegetable oil and, things like that. But that takes a long time to dry and cure. The same with acrylics, I guess. You have to make sure it's cured, and then you can moisten the sheet and actually mold it. And I have some pieces I can show you where I've created a substrate with hardware cloth and have moistened the printed item and then mold it or place it on this sort of molded or shaped substrate and have it held in place and let it dry completely, and it stays that way. It's really fun to try that. So I hope that you do, and you're always welcome to write to me and ask me or show me what you're working on. I suppose I can move on if we have a few minutes. Would you be interested in seeing a couple of different pieces and sort of the process with them?
Yes, we have more like than 30 minutes, and yes,
Oh.
please show us your works.
Okay. So I have several pieces that I'd love to share with you because they're recent. And one of them is this, and it's titled Within, Without.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see sort of how it's constructed. And it's subtly dimensional. And this was for the art tag group that I participate in for Northern California Women's Caucus for Art. And it was titled Constructions and Constructs, and Durba, I think, was in that.
Elizabeth, can you lift the artwork? We can't see it. We can see your face. We don't
Oh.
see. Okay.
Oh, I see, you're on the other one.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, wow. Mm.
I was playing to my cell phone.
Mhm.
So this is where I reused some older imagery from a previous series. Speaking of Is It Done? I felt I wasn't finished with a series I did on Emily Dickinson and some larger pieces. One of them in particular titled I Sing Too Loud. And so I used my own figure and as a silhouette based on some shadows and stuff. And this is the Smith River. from one of my favorite places. It's on the Kelsey Trail and one of our favorite little spots when we do this like 3-hour hike. And there's a seep, and it's one of the few places where you can find the Del Norte salamander. And it's this incredibly mysterious, magical, presence imbued environment. And it is wilderness. And when you get to this seep, there's an area where it flattens out around the trail, and there's some rocks where you cross, huge rocks that have sort of tumbled in this beautiful still life. And in this pool is where we sort of sit and rest and have our lunch. And that's where you can really look up and see the sky after being enveloped and surrounded by the woodland. And if you're there at night, you can see the stars. So I felt it was important for this figure to have the constellations in it. And I used actual constellations and mapped them out, and then poked my little holes all over where they needed to go. And in another sort of obsessive kind of process, picked out a bead for each one of the constellations and how it goes and what would look best together, and sewed them on. There's, gluing doesn't work. I had to sew it. Experience.
This is amazing.
So what I'm doing is exploring with you my current muse, and I want to show you one more. Hold on. Two more. Okay. Another special symbol of this area for me, because we're there every summer, is the swallowtail. And so they are there, and they mysteriously appear and disappear. Like when we pull ourselves out of the water and sit on the rocks to dry off, they will just magically appear. And it's almost like they're drinking up our moisture. And then you look down, and before you know it, they've evaporated, like our moisture in the heat. So this piece is called Messengers, titled Messengers. I was inspired to do this after our visit last August, and it's from a photo I took of the water. I have painted over it, and it's hard to see, but there's some translucent circles of vellum and various other items that are on there that are hard to see. This one I didn't want framed, so I used a circular panel, some embossed paper on the side, metallic, but I painted it. And it hangs just like this. And because the paper is so durable, you don't have to worry about it getting dusty. I tell people who buy my work or see it that all you need is a feather duster. It's okay to let it be free. A lot of the work I initially framed, I felt like it was jailed. I don't know how else to I don't know. Like this is going to be hard to see because of the glare, but this is Huitlacu. I can't really say it, but she's the Aztec goddess.
Chihuitl.
Oh, thank you, Victor. Can you say that again for me?
Chihuitl.
Thank you. That's what it sounded like on the radio when I tried to pronounce it, but my mouth won't make those not. It's so nice to have you here. It's my friend Victor.
I think that piece would look absolutely stunning in my house.
Hi, Jan. I know that voice. But this one, you can also see that it's glowing or reflecting red.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done two versions of this. One is not framed, and I'm probably going to replace this glass with Optium. It is super expensive, so if I invest in it, I'm going to have it, you know, do the whole sheet. And I also have some, oh, but for the, I'll show you just a couple things. So I'll do like a couple of prints, like background and here, and then I make sure she's in just the right place, and I cut her out and layer her. And sometimes, you know, there can be several, and it's all mapped out. In another version of this, I had like a really intense aqua painted like this behind the fish, and then cut them out partially, so they kind of lift partially off the page as well. It's a slightly different treatment of that. So I did two studies of that as well. One of them was sold recently. I have some really fun sculptural pieces that I could show you in the house right now if you want to see them, that use a lot of technique
Yes.
as well.
And we have a couple more questions and comments
Sure.
in chat. So I will start from the last one. Can you please repeat the names of the paper used to create such
Sure.
beautiful pieces?
Sure. Red River is a paper company, and they have wonderful paper for digital printing, and I use the Aurora papers, either bright white or natural. And also my second, or probably my first favorite, but it's too expensive, is the Moab Entrada, and it comes in a couple of different weights and sizes. Red River is great for budgets and good quality. You can even have custom sizes sent to you.
Thank you. Thank you
You're
so much.
so welcome. But there's so many papers out there, and you know, you just have to try them and see what you like best. In terms of straight printmaking papers, that's a different story altogether. If I'm doing analog printmaking, I have other favorites. In my studio, I also have some sculptural works, and it's hard to see them. Oh, that I can have some images that I can show you on my computer. Hold on, if you'd like to see those.
One more question about
Sure.
materials. Yeah. What kind of ink do you use for printmaking?
I used to use Charbonnel Aqua Wash, but I'm pretty much 100% on the Cranfield Safe Wash. Let me show you. And you can get them in tubes or tins.
Cranfield, right?
And yeah, it's oil-based and washable and non-toxic,
Wow.
but I would not eat it. Definitely do not eat it. And they also have like a gel medium and transparent base. So it works just as well as any of the conventional inks that you probably used. And I used to teach printmaking for many, many years. And I thought I would never give up my good, you know, oil-based printmaking inks, but I did. And I am delighted. and they're making them better and better and better. Any other questions?
There is a request to show the sculpture again, please.
Oh, sure.
Maybe you can bring it, no?
I can bring it over. All right. We'll just go like, whoop. So yeah, so these are a couple of shadow box pieces while we're on the way over there. Can you see those? Whoop.
Yeah, well,
Whoops, I don't know what I'm doing
It's-
here. Okay, so, and also there's this piece, which
oh,
some,
that's one of my favorite. This is so beautiful.
Very beautiful.
okay. And then I'm also part of an international art group that I do with some NCWCA people and people from Japan and Australia and Germany. And so let me make sure that you'll be able to see this. Here's one of the boats. And this is, it's a found object piece where I had, probably better to do with the phone. Can you see this?
Yeah, it's like fluffy boat with butterflies as a sail. Mhm.
Can you see that there's a starburst coming out of there? Oh, that was another thing I could show you. That one piece that I had that was more like a mandala. I'm probably going to cut a starburst in the middle of it instead of the scales. And this one, this is the covenant with Noah. When I started this series, and it'll be better for me to show you in the pictures that I've got the images.
Wow, this is amazing.
I'm using passages from Genesis, the covenant with Noah and the floods.
I see.
And when I started these pieces last November, and the one I'm going to show you right now was just completed. Let me see. You know, we were having biblical floods, and now we're having them again after a dry period. And it was another street find, this Bible. And I just thought, well, you know, I had torn it up and made it into some previous projects. And when I opened it up and it was raining and cold in my studio, it just opened up to the flood. And what Noah was saying, or what the passage about the planet was really resonated with me. And I opened up to this passage and I'll read it to you. I've got it here. As long as the earth lasts, seed time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, and day and night shall not cease. And just thinking about the fragility of our planet and the global tensions. But I have some close-ups if you want to see those. Let me try to get all of them.
More question. Do you
Sure.
teach workshops?
Oh, COVID was my off-ramp. But thank you for asking. I do miss teaching. I loved it so, so much. And I love teaching adults in particular. But I have been so busy. The curatorial work really supplanted all of that. I might return to it when my term is up in July. We'll see. But I do need to focus on getting a lot of work done for my solo exhibition. And those of you who've had those, like Durba and others, know that you really need to get on it.
I would just add that if you haven't had a chance to view Elizabeth's painting in person, you should definitely make it because her work in person looks amazing.
Well, thank you, Durba, and likewise. I do have some work at at Arc Gallery right now. I'm one of the spotlighted printmakers, one of 5, curated by Michael Yoakum. And on March 22nd, we're going to have a reception in the afternoon and a trunk sale. So I'll have a bunch of stuff there, and the exhibit, I think, runs through May 3rd. And I have a whole bunch of things that I can put in the in the chat. Sorry, I'm multitasking. I'm not very good at that. So I can share some items with you right now if you're interested. Are you good with that?
Yes, please.
Wait, this will be like super fast. Oh, good. My heater
Yes.
went off. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you see this all right?
Oh,
Yes, yes.
So, this is when I was creating the large boat. Shows all the pieces. The theme of this global art group was found objects, and you can see where the burst is in the middle of that print. That was a print that I wasn't satisfied with, and I couldn't resolve it, so I cut it up and used it in this piece. And all of the imagery I use is original, I want to say. Sometimes I have some found imagery like of the butterflies, but I make it my own. I make them into illustrations. And that's what I try to do. And this is it hanging in my studio.
Wow.
It was, I'm sorry, I was very clumsy with my computer there. So, okay.
It's
The-
great. You could see the stages, like you
Yeah.
were showing us earlier. It's really fantastic to see the completed. That's great.
Oh, good. I'm glad you like it. And this, yeah, this shows, oh, that's the wrong one there. Oh, no, but that's how big the other piece was, that I cut up and used for this piece and saved other pieces of it for the other 2. And, I created, an armature for the wings. You know, the fun part for me is trying to figure out, like, oh my gosh, you know, how am I going to make these wings? How are they going to be pliable but stiff? How are they going to support themselves? And I created prints of the Bible passage enlarged and painted both sides, and then have sort of a wire armature underneath, and then glued them into these half pieces of cork. Some of the passages of the Bible, you know, were kind of weird. And, you know, when you look at it again, or with a different lens, and so I sliced them up and attached them. I wanted them to hang from the bottom of the boat, and so this was another engineering project. What can I do to make them sort of hang from the bottom? So I poked holes. I put like a piece at the top, like when you're punching holes in something, and then used jewelry findings to attach it to a chain, which I attached to the bottom of the boat, and they all are suspended by fishing wire. And this is what that looked like. And you can see that I have those scales sort of peeled back with different colors, and here's the boat.
Wow. I love the layers and I love the complexity of your work. It's so interesting. And it's not only layers of colors and paper, it's layers of meaning you put in it. It's so deep. It's just stunning. Thank you.
Wow, that's lovely. Thank you. Thank you, Tatiana. Yeah, so this is it. The bird cage was really fun. That was also a COVID find, and sometimes things just sit in my studio. It begins to look like a junk collection. And then I think that the birdcage was looking at the flying boats and saying, I can fly too. And so I used, I reprinted parts of that other print, which is called Engraving Memories, also from the Smith River. And I layered, I measured for the bottom platform and everything. Whoops, sorry. And then also sort of wallpapered and painted inside so that it felt like a De Chirico painting, and and actually on the door, when you create these digital kaleidoscopes, sometimes you get figures and stuff. So you can't see it from here, but the inside of that door, it looks like it's sort of an angel figure. And here it is finished. And what you saw in my studio just now is I have old teaching stamps, and I spelled out raptures and covenant, and that I'm going to display with it in the exhibit. And just switching gears, here's some straight on hybrid prints. These are not dimensional except that they're raised from the mount, from the substrate. So they're about 1/8 of an inch off and they cast a soft shadow. And so it's digital based on my own photography and manipulated. And then there's also analog aspects where it goes through the printing press. And it's called the Hills series. And this one is, what is this one called? Grounded. And this one is called Passage. And this is from my photography on my hikes. And even the clouds were from my hikes. And here's a detail. Let me see, there are a few more up here. I saw they got mixed up. This is the first in the series titled Between Heaven and Earth, and a detail. And this is called Breath. And I use actual plant matter in there. And because I forgot to show you, for this one, I'm going to do that burst in the center and cut it open and just let it explode. And unless there are any questions, I'm happy to put some information in the
You have a question?
sure.
For the hill series, what is lifted? The foreground, other layers?
There are no layers like the ones I worked on today. However, it's a flat print that is lifted with another disc underneath it that's slightly smaller than that, and put on the substrate like this is. So the print, just imagine that this is the print. So it's raised slightly from its mount.
Thank you.
What is it?
Did that answer your question? Yeah. In the chat, I'm going to put a whole bunch of information.
Yes, please.
There you go. And I should also put my email, right? This has been really fun. I love sharing with you like this. Feels like teaching again.
Well, I learned a lot from this demo. Yeah, so thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Elizabeth, your work is absolutely stunning. Beautiful.
Oh, thank you, Mary. Thank you so much. That was so sweet. And hello, Parul. Oh, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the nice, feedback. Does anyone else have any questions or want me to include some information for them? If so, you can write to me. Feel free to email me at any time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very beautiful.
Thank you for, visiting me in my Berkeley studio on this beautiful day. I have to show you that it is just gorgeous out there today. I don't know if we can see it. Can you see?
Yes.
Wow.
Oh,
Oh my God. It's so beautiful. The studio is so beautiful.
it's so much light.
Mm.
Today. Yesterday, it was so dark in here. Yeah. Mhm. And thank you, Lena. Is she here today? She was going to try to, she has a computer.
Yes.
So, and thank you so much, Tatiana. You were amazing and so helpful getting me all set up. I really appreciate everything you've done and getting to know your artwork as well.
Thank you. You're very welcome. I enjoy this very much. Enjoy demos and artists. So this is my
there is
pleasure.
I just want to ask, there is a small little lizard at the back. That also is your creation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where are you seeing? Oh,
Elizabeth,
you mean on the wall?
on the wall,
Yes.
on the wall.
Oh, that's a snake skin.
Oh,
Um,
that's amazing.
Yes.
Oh my God.
We were hiking during COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and this is a true story. And this dude is out there walking his snake. He had a huge king snake, and it was molting.
Oh my God.
And he said, "Oh, I like to give my snake fresh air." And I was like, "Are you afraid it's going to run away or something?"
Was it on a, was he, did he have a string or it was following him?
No leash, nothing. And the
Oh my
snake,
God.
I know, it's the weirdest story ever. It just doesn't make any sense when you tell it, but you had to be there. And it was sort of like this platform in Tilden Park that was probably once a picnic area. And then it shed its skin. And I just said, "Can I
Wow.
have that?" And it's waiting for me to do something with it. And next to it are 2 paper wasp nests that I got hiking at the Smith River too.
How big was that snake?
Oh man, it was like 5 feet or something.
Oh,
Wow.
I'm
my
afraid of
God.
snakes. That would
It's
freak
huge.
me out.
This man and his snake had a beautiful relationship.
Thank God he didn't shed his skin. Yeah. That's just,
Man.
yeah. I mean,
Alright.
and that the snake stayed with him.
Yeah. Yeah. He was so relaxed about it. It's like, "Are you afraid it's just gonna go into the bushes?" So yeah, no. True
And that
story.
it would shed at the perfect time. That's so great. Because I've seen that in your studio. I've always liked that piece.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
It's still there. Yeah. I don't know that I'll ever do anything with that actually. I've given a piece of it away to an artist friend, but
I love seeing your process today. It's really, really incredible.
well, Jan, who's speaking now, has printed with me in my studio, and she's an amazing collage artist herself. And so glad to have you here.
Elizabeth, thank you so much
Thank
for
Thank you.
so much.
your demo.
Really enjoyed it.
I loved it.
Oh, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Thank you. So do we just say goodbye until next time?
Hasta la vista.
Please don't.